Welcome, everybody, to the Metal Command podcast. Tony here with you, and I have a couple of guests, of course, with me today. Both of these gentlemen have made their mark in the scene as Michael Brandvold, who is a really good publicist, has his own music podcast dealing with industry stuff. Of course, we'll get into his background a little bit, but he's done some work with Kiss, Wasp, and, of course, is the PR guy for Bravewords Records. And I have Giles Lavery, who is in more bands than I can count, who will probably be coming back on the show to talk about some of the cool stuff that he has going on. But there's a new Dragon's Claw album that he sings on that I think is very good. He sang in the last Warlord album. He sings in Alcatraz, and he also works for Bravewords Records as well and manages bands and all that other fun stuff. So we're going to talk about Bravewords Records itself, and then we'll talk about some fun industry stuff, which I know many of you out there that follow the show do check out on occasion. And you hear me comment on that, and I've had guests talking about that as well. So welcome back, Giles, and welcome to the show for the first time, Michael. It's nice to finally have a face-to-face discussion.
Thanks, Tony. It's a pleasure.
All right, gentlemen. So let's talk about Bravewords Records. You just had some recent signings. David Reese, I believe, is one of the more recent ones. But you have a lot of really great veteran musicians on the label. And talk about how the label came together and what the record label is all about.
Well, I'll start with the genesis of it. So I've known Metal Tim Henderson, who's, he is Bravewords. I've known him for well over a decade now. Tim is, he's just a legend in the metal world. Everybody who's metal knows of Bravewords, knows of his magazine before that. And at some point, I remember a conversation because, I'm a marketing person. It's in my blood, and I'm always looking at branding opportunities and expansions. And I'm like, Tim, have you ever thought of a Bravewords record label? I'm like, my God, you're the heart of metal. Bravewords.com. You had the magazine. You used to do CDs with the magazine. Every musician knows you. And, he kind of, I've thought about it. It would be a cool idea. And I'm like, well, let's see if this can actually become something. Let's see if we can make this happen. And before Giles got involved and before the label, as you know it now, was launched, we were working with the late, great Freddie Salem from the Outlaws. Freddie I had known Freddie for decades and decades. He'd produced and worked with some independent unsigned bands that I was managing years ago. But Freddie was somebody who was well connected throughout the music industry. He knows everybody. Everybody knows Freddie. He was an active session guitar player still. And we were like, Freddie, do you have any insight? Can you help maybe find investors, partners, whatever? And he tried to put stuff together, but it sort of it was happening. The economy wasn't great. Then the pandemic hit, and anybody who wanted to do business deals was just cautious about everything at that point in time.
Yeah.
And coming out of that, then it was like, well, I crossed paths with Giles with there was a label you and Carl were doing, Giles.
Well, yeah, it was sort of in its embryo. From my side, it was the embryonic stages of what we're doing now. A label called Louder Than Loud.
There you go. That was it. Yeah.
When me and Carl had an investor who had given us the big spiel about it's a blank check. I got loads of money to invest because I always say to anyone, starting a label is like opening up a restaurant. Be prepared to make no money for 2 years. Minimum. And it's going to be outgoing more than you can believe. And the investor me and Carl had was like, oh yeah, that's no problem, man. Money's no object. Turns out all that guy really wanted to do was just release his own album.
I remember
I'm not talking about Carl. I'm talking about the investor. Carl's a
Right.
legit guy. Carl Kennedy's an awesome guy. And so me and Carl trusted this other third-party investor who I'm not going to name. Turns out he didn't really want to start a label in the traditional sense. He didn't really want to sign bands. He just wanted a vanity project to release his own band's album, which, I mean, really, you could have done that on CD Baby or some current, equivalent of that. And instead of, running us around the block a few times, and, it drove me crazy. It was about a year of my life I'll never get back, trying to set up this label, because I was essentially the be-all, end-all, because no one else knew how to run a label. And it was like Dexter's Lab. Everyone was, it felt like this investor was doing his best to undermine the whole thing faster than I could get it together. So I was kind of like, boy, I'm done with this. And finally I was. When the investor figured out this wasn't going to be like a platform to launch his band to fame and fortune and touring with Motley Crue and whatever he thought it was going to be, he was nowhere to be found. So that project kind of wrapped up and ended. And then I was asked by one of our partners at Bravewords and a dear friend of mine, Brian Adams, who has asked me to come in when he was running a collective of companies that was sort of operating under the name Store for Music in the UK. And he had everything from television to movies to enormous back catalogs, reissue labels like Angel Air, under his operation, and a huge background at Eagle and Warner Brothers and et cetera, et cetera. His resume is way too big for me to summarize, accurately or fairly here. And he said, I want to start a metal label. And we did. And we started signing bands. We signed Lillian Axe. We signed a number of the bands that are now Bravewords Records artists. That label then was called Global Rock. And we did that for a couple of years. And we were getting a good head of steam going and signing bands and acquiring catalog, and it was going well. Brian came to me one day and said, I'm 76, I'm 77, something like that. It's time for me to, retire. I want to retire. And I was a little bit like, oh, we're just getting going here, Brian. He said, don't worry. I'm selling my entire operation to what was the other sort of next, equally big competitor in the UK. And they bought everything. They bought Global Rock. They bought, the catalog, the contracts, everything. They bought that. And then I was going to go and work for them, running Global Rock. Thing is, they already had a couple of metal labels under their umbrella, and they didn't really feel that they needed a third one. So I honored my commitments for a year there to the artists that were signed to Global Rock and pending the releases that we had scheduled. And it was at that point Michael and Tim came to me with this idea for Bravewords Records. In which case I rang up Brian and I said, that retirement, it's cancelled.
Exactly.
And we sucked him back in, and we with his expertise and his wherewithal to set up a label, and having 40 plus years experience in doing so, we were able to launch Bravewords Records.
Yeah, the main, how do I describe this? The main focus, the main mantra of Bravewords Records is, as a record label, we want to give all of our artists access to the entire Bravewords world. Mm-hmm. So the websites, all the social networks, anything and everything that Bravewords has, Bravewords Records can use, and we do. I mean, I'm sure you see, Tony. I mean, any of the listeners probably see. It's like, wow, when we were marketing Paul Di'Anno's Warhorse, boy, there was a post about Paul Di'Anno's Warhorse all the time across every Bravewords social channel. If you go to the bravewords.com website, it's like, we've got our own dedicated banners running on the site, but we also get I mean, higher priority when news stories and press releases. It's not that Bravewords now is only working Bravewords Records. It's just they still work all the other labels that are out there, but we make sure that our stories will get placement in the sliders and all this other stuff, which, as Tim said, it's like, every label on the planet is coming to me wanting to know how they can get that stuff. And you can get that by sponsoring bravewords.com. I mean, it's like any website out there. You want to take over a website, you cut an ad sponsorship deal with that website, and you can skin the website. You can have pop-ups, all this other stuff. Well, as Bravewords Records, that's just part of what we can do. We just can do that. So that's what, our big driver was. We can bring that to all of these artists. And on top of that, we wanted to get back to we're here to actually work for you and with you as an artist.
Hey everybody, Tony here from the Metal Command podcast. Again, I appreciate your support. Since 1998, I have hosted this show in one form or another, starting off in radio and now in the podcast format. Again, thanks for watching, and if you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video, and if you see this program on any other form of social media, please give me a follow there. Again, I always appreciate your support.